half in the bag.
And we're back.
Where'd we go? What else we got? What did we just talk about? Wish Upon?
We talked about Wish Upon.
Well, let's talk about another horror film that goes in a much, much different direction than Wish Upon.
It's not quite as funny as Wish Upon.
No, it's called The Blackcoat's Daughter.
You do know about the sisters, don't you? They worship the devil.
This is directed by Oz Perkins, who's Anthony Perkins' son.
Blackcoat's Daughter stars the little girl from Mad Men.
I've never watched Mad Men, but I know is she John Hamm's daughter? What's her role on that show?
Her name's Sally.
Okay.
John Hamm has 2 kids with January Jones. That's it. I mean, what else do you want to know? You want me to fucking explain Mad Men to you?
Oh, I thought you were going to say that was the end of your review of The Blackcoat's Daughter.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
I loved this movie. This is what we were talking about It, and now it's like constant jump scares. Like every 5 minutes, they have to remind you that you're watching a horror movie.
Creepy clown!
Yeah, this feels like a movie from another fucking era. This is
the
like
1970s.
Late 60s, 70s movie where it really takes its time and builds the tension. So The Blackcoat's Daughter takes place at a private all-girls school. Everybody's leaving for break. What's the name? Sally is the little girl from Mad Men. She's stuck at the school. She doesn't know when her parents are going to show up to pick her up. It's the dead of winter. Very isolated, very Shining-esque because it's the dead of winter, which is a great place to set your movie, your horror film. I think of like The Thing and this and The Shining.
Star Wars The Last Jedi.
And Star Wars The Last Jedi, of course. That's Salt, though.
Yeah.
They make a point of having an awkward close-up of a character who scoops it up and goes, and he looks into the camera and goes, "It's salt." So they're stuck at the school, it's isolated, and they keep cutting back and forth between the 2 girls there and Emma Roberts coming to the town, and everything just feels like off. And there's all these little like sort of time discrepancies where you're like, oh wait, that doesn't make any sense. And then it escalates and...
Oh, there's the furnace too.
That's the
metaphorical Satan.
Yeah, well the Mad Men girl, she goes down and she's in the furnace room and she's like, it's this really creepy shot of the other girl looking in on her and she's like, you don't know what she's doing. It's fucked up. It's all these things where you're like, what is happening? What is this building towards? And then we get into the Satanist stuff, which is great because I love movies about Satanism. And it turns out that the little Mad Men girl is possessed by a fucking demon. It's so wonderful.
I love slow-moving, eerie, creepy movies. As long as they refresh you every now and then.
Yeah.
You got to.
Well, as long as it feels like it's building towards something. And this movie, you're so like, because like I said, everything feels off. So you're constantly trying to figure out like, where is this going? And it's engaging in that way.
I mean, I just wish you could stay and see my performance. That's all.
Well, Jay, when I look back at the year, the Belko experiment made me uncomfortable and physically ill. But there's another film that tops my list of films that made me sick to my stomach without showing blood and gore and guts and torture. Post-apocalyptic horror, psychological thriller, one of the few films in recent years, maybe the last decade, that has truly made me ill. And that film is Star Wars The Last Jedi. But of course I'm talking about, say it.
It Comes at Night?
Yes.
Spoilers, nothing comes at night. This was a movie that was completely mismarketed.
Yes.
They took because the only like scary scenes in the movie are dream sequences. And so whoever was cutting that trailer was like, give me that shit. I gotta put something in this trailer. Because it's not a movie about anything literally coming at night. So I guess they're talking about the paranoia of the situation. I really, really liked this movie when it came out. I have not seen it since, and it's almost completely slipped from my brain, which probably isn't a good sign. Split I haven't seen since it first came out, and that movie's still very vivid in my mind.
Interesting.
So It Comes at Night I liked a lot. I liked the tension and the execution of the whole thing. but I don't remember much about the fucking movie anymore.
Okay.
I just remember it was, at the end, it almost felt like misery porn, where it's just like, you know.
You call a deeply disturbing psychological drama misery porn.
Well, it gets to the end, and you're like, okay, but what are you really saying? It almost feels like it's a movie that, and this is from what I remember, because I don't remember much about the movie. I just remember it coming to the end, and things go really dark, and it's really depressing and miserable, but like, to what end? Like, I didn't remember it feeling like it was saying anything.
I mean, okay, it didn't have a clear-cut message, but it was definitely a film about paranoia, about
how quickly we can turn on each other,
yeah,
all those things.
But
Sure.
I mean, themes that are overdone in post-apocalyptic movies, of course, but this one was on a very small scale.
I guess that's the hook of the movie, is that, yeah, it's the typical kind of post-apocalyptic scenario, but scaled back.
Yeah.
To the point where it's just these couple of characters.
Right. I mean, you have a husband, wife, and a kid. The husband who's played by Joel Edgerton. He, you know, obviously he wants to protect his wife and his son. And then so they slowly agree to let in these strangers, and he's very suspicious of them, and then suspicion grows, and you know, it's very slow moving, very calculated, and very. It's disturbing because you kind of start to agree with him about his suspicions over time, and that all culminates in a really like disturbing and sickening ending, which I thought it was. I mean, you may say misery porn, but what happens is it's awful.
Yes.
And really, Jay, I'm surprised you didn't love the film.
No, I liked the movie a lot, and I embrace movies that kind of go to the darker side of your mind. I just remember feeling terrible at the end, but then not remembering much about the movie after,
sure.
not really like resonating, which makes me think like, oh, okay, well, was there anything to it other than trying to make you feel terrible?
Yeah.
You know?
It's funny you mention it comes at night, that nothing comes at night. There's barely any scenes at night. It was enjoyable reading the reviews on Redbox. If you ever want to laugh, read the Redbox reviews.
Nothing happens. It's boring. I was
Stupid
waiting for the
shit.
monsters to
Yeah.
show up.
Nothing comes at night.
Yeah.
I was waiting
I'm sure
for
I can see them all in my head.
a horde of zombie monsters to come. And it's like, no. It's a shame you have to use deceptive marketing tactics to sell a good film.
Yeah. Well, you can't release a trailer that says, nothing happens in this movie. Come check it out.
It'll make you feel like shit.
Well, continuing what we were talking about earlier with movies being released direct to Netflix, and thankfully being able to avoid seeing films in the horrible, horrible theatrical experience, I saw Netflix's Gerald's Game.
Gerald? What? What's happening? Gerald!
This is one of the best Stephen King adaptations ever. It's basically Captain Pike. Is that his name from the Star Trek reboot, the J.J. Abrams?
Bruce Greenwood.
Bruce Greenwood. Him and his wife, played by...
Old wrinkle face.
Old wrinkle face. He's a buff old dude. But him and his wife, played by Carla Gugino, they go to this sort of summer house, and they're trying to re-spark their marriage. He ends up handcuffing her to a bed, and then he has a heart attack and dies. And she's stranded out in the middle of nowhere, handcuffed to this bed. And then as it goes along, you kind of discover some things about her past, the sort of history of abuse. You get to know more about her relationship with Bruce Greenwood. And it's just about her trying to survive and get out of the situation.
Okay.
And very, very simple premise, fantastic performance. Like that Carla Gugino, she's been in shit forever, and she's always just been like, whatever, actress.
So
She's been fine.
So emotional drama porn.
Emotional drama porn, yes. Elliot from E.T. plays her dad in flashback scenes, and he's fucking creepy as shit. It has a sequence, maybe a 10-minute sequence, that may be the most tense I've felt in a movie in a really, really long time, to the point where I thought I was going to throw up.
Wow, that's high praise from you.
But not just because it is sort of visceral and something really horrific happens, but it's more the situation and the tension that's been building up throughout the movie because of that. And then I guess the ending is kind of divisive for people, the last 10 minutes or so. Some people say it kind of ruins the movie. To me, it's what elevated it from just being like a really solid drama to being a great movie, because it just feels so, after everything you learn about her character and everything she goes through, it just feels so cathartic. And it's just a really, really strong movie all the way around, from the directing to the performance. It's one of those classic cases of taking it kind of like Misery, where it's just such a simple premise. Again, with someone just tied to a bed for most of the movie. And just, yeah, really, really well done. I loved it.
High recommendations from Jay. I may watch this.
Also related to Night of the Kick Fighters, Lurch is in it. Fucking Lurch shows up.
Really?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, did you get a chance to see the Florida Project this year?
I did not see the Florida Project.
Really?
Yeah. I like that director's last movie, Tangerine, a lot, but I haven't seen Florida Project.
I'm surprised. Florida Project is up there with one of my favorites of the year.
The man who lives in here gets arrested a lot. These are the rooms we're not supposed to go in. But let's go anyway.
Who's the guy? His name's like...
Sean Baker?
Something like that, yeah. I didn't see Tangerine, but Florida Project, Willem Dafoe plays the manager of a hotel, which is basically like a really trashy apartment building. Technically, people can rent long term there, but really they have to get out, and they have to, it's in the shadow of Disney World in Florida, where all the slums are, of slummy hotels and horrible trashy people.
Who's looking after Mommy?
You're not my father.
I don't want to be your father.
You can't treat me like this.
The breakout performance is the mother, who is the most cinematically accurate portrayal of horrible white trash ever seen in a film.
Is this a known actress, or is it like a...
That's the question I had. I was like, is this an actress doing this job? If so, she needs to get all the Oscars. Even technical ones, like best cinematographer.
Just give it to the actress.
Design. Just give her all the Oscars, because it's amazing. But it turns out, I think it was stunt casting.
Oh, okay.
I think the guy found her at a Walmart.
Oh.
I don't know anything about the situation, so the mother's selling stolen cologne in the parking lots of nicer hotels, and it depicts poverty and that kind of lifestyle in a very realistic way, as opposed to the goofy Hollywood way that depicts poverty, where everyone has a southern accent for some reason. And the ending is the mother finally gets hauled off by CPS. And then the little girl's friend grabs her hand and says, "Come on!" And then they run away from their trashy apartment complex they live in, and they run to Disney World.
Okay.
And then it's shot on film, I believe, and then it switches to digital very, very abruptly, and they're running through Disney World.
It's clear they were trying to do it incognito.
Guerrilla filmmaking style, because they didn't get clearance.
Sure.
And they run into Disney World, and he's running with the little girls, and all these tourists are looking at the camera, and she makes it, and she sees the Magic Kingdom, and then it ends. And it's okay, I get what you did there. You have an ending. But at no point in the whole movie did the girl mention wanting to go to Disney World.
Okay.
Ever. It's it's like the slummy shadows of Disney World, like the underbelly.
Yeah.
If there is a seedy underbelly to the Disney World community around it.
See, I could see it if it was throughout the movie, where they live, if you could see Disney World on the horizon or something.
There's a part where they watch fireworks, and you could see them in the distance going off, because I think they do nightly fireworks at Disney World off the Magic Kingdom or whatever. So they watch the free fireworks. you get kind of like the mild echo effect of living in that environment. You see billboards and, you know, stay here for Disney World, 50% off, you know, like cheap merchandise. At one point, the mother steals like, from one of her Johns, she steals a bunch of Disney World badges and resells them to some guy at a gift shop, you know, like there's that sort of stuff. But the girl never really like expresses interest in actually going to Disney World. I think it's more like metaphorical, like she can live a normal life now or something like that. But that stupid ending.
But Disneyland is like a cynical theme park that is just trying to steal your money.
Exactly.
I mean, I guess from the eyes of a child, it's a magical place. But
it was doing the child through the eyes of the child. But 99% of the movie up until that very end is just like disgusting and brutal and real life and very engaging and very good.
Let's go, come on.
Well, let's get away from these miserable, depressing movies that make you feel terrible. I saw Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Also known as Bambi.
Giving love to the
How did his father die?
A surgeon never kills a patient. An anesthesiologist can kill a patient, but a surgeon never can.
Quite possibly the most depressing, disturbing, miserable movie of the year. And another one of my favorites.
I have not seen this. I've heard it's good.
It's very, very fucking good. It's the guy who directed Dogtooth, which I don't think you've seen that. You saw The Lobster, and I know you didn't like The Lobster. The Lobster's more overtly comedic. It's very dry, very, very dry sense of humor. I keep seeing people talk about how this movie is so disturbing and dark, and it is. And maybe it's just me, maybe I'm messed up, but I also found a really dark, sardonic sense of humor in it, and just the kind of absurdity of the situation. But it's basically Colin Farrell is this doctor, and he sort of befriends this younger kid whose dad died during surgery that Colin Farrell was performing. And so it's like he feels bad, so he's sort of taken this kid under his wing. He has a wife and 2 kids, Colin Farrell does. And the kid, it's very vague, but essentially the kid puts like a hex on the family where one by one they will slowly lose control of their limbs. So they're just laying in bed, and then they will lose the will to eat, and then they will bleed from the eyes and die. And he puts Colin Farrell in this moral dilemma where he's like, you can either, much like you killed someone in my family, you can kill one of the members of your family so the other ones live, or they're all going to slowly die. And that's the premise of the movie, and it's told in a very that's a sort of Kubrickian camera work. There's lots of great, very symmetrical shots of like people going down hospital hallways, and the dialogue is very like mannered and unnatural, kind of like a Wes Anderson movie. You know, everything's sort of heightened. And then it just gets more and more disturbing as it goes along.
Well, no spoilers here today, Jay.
No, I don't want to spoil it. I think everybody should watch this movie, unless you don't like weird, creepy, depressing movies. But it's just so unique and so different than everything else that's out right now, you know?
Well, I read some fan theories about the origins of Colin Farrell's character.
Oh, okay.
Where did he train in medicine?
Oh, it turns out he didn't. He's from nowhere. He's just a guy.
Oh, okay.
He's just a guy in a silver robe.
Oh, okay. Because many people were anticipating the release of this film and wondering.
I'm sure we'll find out in the Killing of a Sacred Deer side story. But no, the dark humor comes from, because he has this dilemma, like, do I kill one of my fucking kids? Do I kill my wife so the other ones can survive or not? And at a certain point, he takes the kid that's put the hex on the family, and he has him like locked up in his basement, but the daughter is in love with the kid. It's really fucked up. But they have no control over their legs, so the kids are just like laying in bed, and the daughter's like dragging herself down to the basement to be with the kid. It's just, it's so fucked up that like it's almost like one of those things where the situation is so horrifying that you don't know how to react. So for me, it became sort of comedic. So I don't know if it'll have that same effect on other people, but it really good.
You're a sick person.
I think it's just that I'm a very sick person.
There's something wrong with you.
Okay.
Well, Jay, I have 2 films now to watch: Killing of a Sacred Deer and Gerald's Game, based on your recommendation.
You should watch them back to back as a double feature, and then hang yourself.
Okay, and then Logan Jones will film me, or whatever the fuck that little
Logan Paul.
or whatever the fuck that little prick's name is.
That stupid asshole.
So they can put it out, out, out.
Well, speaking of Satanism, here's a fucking random one. I just came across this on iTunes one day. I didn't know what the hell it was. It's called Mansfield 6667. And it's a documentary about the last 2 years of Jane Mansfield's life and how she befriended Anton LaVey, the creator of the Church of Satan. It's a documentary about a very specific person in a very specific era in Hollywood history that I was completely unfamiliar with. It's basically like as her life went on, she died very young in a car accident, but in the last 2 years of her life, yeah, she was like looking for answers or looking for some sort of direction, spiritually. And so she befriended the head of the Church of Satanism. And the documentary has interviews with like John Waters is in it. I think that's why I watched it. I was like, oh, okay, I'll watch this. The bizarre circumstances revolving around her death, which is Anton LaVey supposedly put a hex on her husband at the time because he was like kind of an asshole and abusive, and a hex on him to die in a car accident. And then she died in a car accident with him. So it's like, oh, that's kind of creepy. That's eerie.
Huh. Interesting.
There's some really lame, like, interpretive dance interludes where they have people wearing, like, Jane Mansfield wigs and doing these bizarre dances that are representing what's happening in the story. And they're completely stupid and bullshit. But they're minimal. It's mostly, like, talking heads and archival interviews and stuff. But if you're interested in the history of the Church of Satan and this brief little moment in Hollywood history, I really liked it. I thought it was an interesting story that I was completely unfamiliar with.
What is fact versus what is rumor and hearsay? I wish I knew.
It was spooky, and I love spooky things.
I don't care if it's true. I like to picture that. I like to picture.
You sometimes have to just print the legend.
Do we have any other films to recap from 2017, Jay? There are probably a lot. We should make special mention of things we did not see. You know, your Dunkirks and
Oh, I saw Dunkirk. It was fine.
Well, Jay, let's move on to our final film of the year. My pick for my favorite film this year, a film called A Ghost Story. Because, you know, I believe in ghosts.
This is a movie about paranormal research. There's lots of night vision shots. Zach Baggins shows up, which was off-putting.
That scene when Zach Baggins comes in and does a lockdown, trying to capture the ghost.
You see Casey Affleck in a sheet run by in the background?
Yeah. My little device is going off. Casey Affleck just says, "Get out."
Why are you wearing that sheet, bro?
Don't you make fun of Zach Baggins. That man is a national treasure. But seriously, A Ghost Story. Wow.
This is also my favorite movie of the year. This is a fantastic film.
Yeah, it's a movie that sticks with you. It's a movie, legacy, love, your place in the universe, like super big, heavy themes.
The passing of time.
The passage of time. Oh God, the super big, heavy themes done in the smallest, subtlest way to perfection.
Yeah. Quaint. It's quaint, even in as far as how it's executed. It's weird to say that a movie shot in 4:3 is like...
Not just 4:3, 4:3 vignetted.
Well, that was my initial concern when I saw the trailer. I was like, oh, this looks like hipster overload.
When the movie starts, it looks like a hipster nightmare.
Yeah.
And it's like mumblecore hipster nightmare. And I was like, oh no, oh fuck. and as I sunk into my seat, and I said, what have I done? Watching it, and then, by golly.
Well, it turns out, I mean, the 4:3 is perfect for the movie because it's such an intimate story and an intimate movie. And when you shoot in 4:3, you know, your actors have to be closer. Everything feels more confined in a way where, like, there's scenes, the early on scenes with them laying in bed next to each other, and because of the aspect ratio, they're right next to each other, and you're right there with them. It's great. You do have to get past the infamous pie eating scene.
Yes.
That was where I was starting to question the movie.
The pie eating scene is like what?
It's one of those things where it's like, you get it, like, okay, I get it, and then it keeps going, and you're like,
And it's not until much, much later that you realize that it had a purpose, almost, where it comes to, it's like, okay, the general premise is Casey Affleck and his girlfriend live in this little house, and he's a songwriter, and he dies, and he becomes a ghost. Very simple premise, and it's a literal ghost in a sheet.
Yes, which goes along with the quaint. When I say it's quaint, it's very, like, they're not trying to do anything ethereal, and that's another thing that could come across as hipstery, like, oh, he's a ghost, you know, he's a sheet with holes cut out. Yes. But it works in the way that, like, the movie kind of evokes this sort of simpler time, simpler mentality, where it's like, it really works in a way that if he was just like a glowing spirit, or he was just like translucent, it wouldn't have the same effect.
This isn't Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore. It's more postcard.
Yeah.
I think that feeling makes you feel like 8mm film, where it has the vignetting.
It makes you think back
edge.
to a simpler time.
Yes.
And like the idea of wearing a Halloween costume as a kid that's just a sheet, like that kind of evokes that feeling.
Yes.
Even though he's a literal ghost.
Right. And so it's a stylistic choice that could have been disastrous, but it works magnificently.
Yes.
And also, I think if it was shot in a wider aspect ratio, it would come off comical. The aspect ratio helps.
Yeah.
Not a word of dialogue until there's some subtitles when he communicates with other ghosts.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, I don't want to get into all the details, but really, like, the girlfriend's grief-stricken, she comes home from the funeral, and she gorges on a pie.
Right.
And
sitting on the floor in the kitchen.
She eats a whole pie.
It's like 7 minutes, 8 minutes, something like that.
It's very long, and then she goes and pukes it up. And he's there the whole time.
Just standing there,
standing there staring at her. And then I think the pie scene going on so long, later on, it's like time starts speeding up. It's just sort of like demonstrating like how he perceives the passage of time.
Yeah.
At first it's very slow and almost in real time, and then, you know, as the years go by, things start escalating almost to the point where it becomes cyclical, let's say that, without spoiling anything. Because, I mean, it's kind of like saying spoiling an experience. There are not a lot of like plot points or moments. There's things that happen, and then there is one wonderful scene where a hipster asshole explains life and the universe.
See, I was going to say that's the scene that is a little too on the nose. And it's also like the first bit of dialogue we've had in like an hour, but
it's interesting. It is on the nose.
What makes it work is the fact that it is kind of a hipstery character at this like hipster party. It's like, that's okay. That's kind of how we can get away with explaining the movie a little bit more.
Yeah. And at first you're like, oh, shut up, you know, some guy philosophizing at a party is the most annoying thing in the world. But then, and everyone else is like, yeah, shut up. And then what he's saying basically starts to make sense.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the movie itself encapsulated into a big line of dialogue. It starts off like, oh, hipster, yeah, you're cool with your aspect ratio. Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
And it really sinks in there, and it makes you feel, and it gives you an emotional response, and you dwell on it.
And that's just it, the slow pacing of it all, not just the pie eating scene, but the whole movie it's very slow, it's very quiet, it's very like meditative. Like it lingers on these shots because it wants you to get lost in that moment and start to, you know, the whole movie, because I think I'd heard some things beforehand that it was a movie about love, and it really isn't. I mean, to a certain extent, it's about this couple, but it's more, for me, it was more about time and you know, how we view time and the time we have on this earth and place as well. So much of it is centered on this house and the memories we have in specific places.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah.
It is at the core a movie about love. I agree with that. And I don't want to say too much because, I mean, that's the crux of the whole ending.
Would you say that it's a movie about family?
No, that's The Last Jedi.
It's about family, and that's what's so powerful about it.
This is a much better film. But again, interpretive.
Yeah.
I mean, because there's some really wonderful visuals towards the end when, I mean, gosh, I don't want to say anything about it because there's some, let's just say this, the passage of time is illustrated very interestingly through what happens to locations and kind of like he's just a ghost and he's still going through the world and he hasn't moved on and all these things are happening around him that at first he can affect, which is our wonderful ghost haunting scene, which I enjoyed thoroughly. And then after a while, he just gives up, and then things change around him. And then there's the thread of the note hidden in the walls. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's like it's a movie that its themes reach beyond the movie and make you think about the bigger picture of stuff. And it is vague at times, but then it is very specific. And I haven't seen a movie that has like made me think so much afterwards. Yeah.
Well, that lingers with you. It lingers. And the way that the shots linger, like it forces you to kind of, you know.
No pun intended, it is haunting.
Yes, absolutely.
But not in a spooky way, in a philosophical way.
It almost feels like an intentional counterbalance to movies and where like big movies are now by going as far in the opposite direction as possible and just making something so simple and so stripped down. It's not even in widescreen, it's 4:3. Like it almost feels like an answer to kind of how bloated a lot of movies have gotten.
I saw it in an art house theater. There were a handful of elderlies.
Were they sleeping?
It was dead silent. And
the movie's dead silent.
I know.
Like, I can't imagine seeing this in a big theater.
No, that's the thing. I'm not saying big theater. I'm saying art house theater. Where people are normal and they're not monsters. Right. And everyone was just as quiet as the film, and it was a wonderful experience. So, like, definitely when you watch this, do the things I always suggest, which is shut off all the lights, turn your phone off, and you really have to immerse yourself. And that's what's hard about it's stuff nowadays.
Yeah, it's rare. Even movies that I'm really like into and interested in, it's rare for me to be just completely focused on it in a way that I was with this movie. And I saw it at home. I didn't see it in the theater, and it almost thematically it almost works seeing it at home because it ties into what the movie's about. Yeah. So yeah, a very quiet, small, intimate movie. The polar opposite of a lot of the things we discuss on Half in the Bag. And yeah, I can't recommend it enough.
My favorite thing I've seen this whole year was A Ghost Story. Even though Casey Affleck's an alleged sex pervert, he was in the costume the whole time.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And that's admirable. That's admirable. And also check out the Redbox reviews for it.
I think it would break my heart to read the Redbox reviews for it.
I have watched many bad movies. This is the worst movie ever, if you can call it a movie. Every part of it was horrible. All it was is a man in a sheet with 2 holes cut out. Who did this, a 3-year-old? But wait, the 3-year-old would be more creative, would never suggest anyone to watch. Slow, slow, slow. Literally found other stuff to do and came back to the same scene. No words. Tick tock, boring. Was disappointed to waste money on it. Don't listen to my half-star rating. I really wanted to rate it 0 stars. Ridiculous jerk-off movie. It sucked. It's just a dead man under a sheet watching his girlfriend like a 10-year-old's Halloween costume throughout the entire movie. I'll never get that hour and a half back. I am clueless as to what this was even all about. Boring, boring, boring. Did I say boring? Do not rent unless you want to watch someone eat pie for 5 min or a ghost stand there for 10 min. Too artsy-fartsy and vague. Overall, the plot made no sense and just didn't add up. Incredibly slow moving. I can understand why this made no money at the box office. Just say no to this movie for a rental. This movie will not scare you. It will bore you from beginning to end. It is not deep. It is silly, and Casey Affleck could have used a good haircut and shave. Avoid this movie like the plague. Very bad fast-forward movie Glad got for free. Horrible. No stars. Casey Affleck or Mr. Magoo could have been under that sheet. Slow-moving and predictable. All for creative storytelling, but for God's sake, some of us need to work in the morning. Parenthetical pacing. We made it about 10 min in, and then I turned on Seinfeld. Thought it was the dumbest, dullest, so-called film ever made. I can't believe someone actually got paid for this. You call this acting? I have better videos recorded on my phone. What a freaking genius to come up with this. Pass this one up. The director's arrogant attempt to be artsy failed. Several times I thought I accidentally paused the movie, but it was playing, albeit slowly. Several 5-minute scenes of nothing happening. Pretentious and most overrated film I've seen. Watched the movie and fast forward and never even realized it. Still wasn't fast enough. Really, really bad movie. Stays on one scene way too long, with nothing going on. I'm a thinker, so I looked around assuming there was meaning to the sitting there. I mean, I get the movie. It's a legit ghost stories. His story of being a ghost. But it's boring. Very, very boring. One of the worst movies I have ever seen. No dialogue, just a guy walking along in a sheet with eye holes cuff out. You think he's going to make a connection with the neighbor ghost, but oh no, not this cinemalargic gem. Not this cinemalartic gem. There are waved. That's it.